So, this is the EDIT Educational Video Challenges organizers discussing about technical aspects of educational video. And and how do we start? How much focus, how much value should teachers, students, or participants of the EDIT put into the technical aspects of the video? What's the most important things? What's the must know? What is good to know? What is nice to know part of the technical aspects of video? Who would
Okay.
like to start? Rebecca, go ahead.
I would say that as the technical aspects are not as important as the educational value, all the technical aspects have to support the educational value. So they are important, but they are not as important as the educational value. Just they are a help.
Yeah, Christian.
Some things I think that are crucial, and the most crucial probably is sound. An educational video where you don't understand anything is not a good educational video. Yeah, and this is actually also quite probably one of the most tricky things, because all the other things are quite easy nowadays. Yeah, but to have good sound for what I'm planning to do is not always that easy. Sometimes it involves the necessity of using a second device. Even if you work with a phone, even if you film with a smartphone, it might need a second smartphone as soon as you want to include like something like interviews or something. You need that very, very easily, because usually you cannot get as close to actually your object, to the object you are filming, especially if this is a human object who is talking. You hardly ever can get close enough with the video recording device to have good sound as well. So you usually have to consider a second device for recording sound and combine the two things in the editing. That is usually possible with most editing softwares. So if you, whatever you're using, if you watch a tutorial for that, you can add an additional soundtrack probably in most editing tools, even in the very, very simple ones. So make yourself familiar with doing that, because that is something you probably need. And the
Yeah.
second thing is light. Yeah, when it's dark, you don't see anything in the video. So make sure you have enough light, and make sure that you don't film against the light, because if you film against the light, a camera always tries to adjust the kind of the outside light and the inside light, and then usually you as a person are dark. So if you consider that, you have the most basic stuff done.
Yeah, we have had a few examples of people filming and recording in difficult situations, for example, inside a moving car, where they have had a recording device and microphone very close to the speaker, but the sound of the car inside the car is so loud that it's really difficult to process the sound afterwards if you can see the tires and the traffic so loudly echoing inside the car. So yeah, sometimes the voiceover might be the only right way to go, or then you just really have to record the certain lines separately from the surroundings of let's say you're out in the city in the traffic or inside a car or factory or something. Yeah, Christian.
But even if you want to use the original sound, the closer you are with the recording device for the sound, the less you get from the surrounding. The further you are away with your recording device from sound, the more you get from the surrounding sound as well. So if you have surrounding sound, which is sometimes unavoidable, and sometimes you even want a little bit of original sound, because when driving in a car and if you have only voiceover, it sounds a bit artificial. Yeah, because as a viewer, you expect a little bit of sound when the car is driving. Yeah, but then you have to be very close with your sound recording device, which can be a second smartphone. No problem with that.
And the example we've also seen quite often is people have filmed and recorded inside like university hallways in a classrooms where you have a lot of echo, a lot of different noises, and even though the sound quality is good, there are just too many sounds in the classroom, for example, if you're working with the group. Of course, again, you want those realistic sounds of actually being inside the school and with the group. But if you want one separate comment to be heard, maybe you have to organize or direct the situation a little bit so that you can actually hear that particular line that has to be heard by the viewers. So maybe some direction is needed, especially if you're in a situation where you are probably having more than one people talking. How about image quality? We now see all the YouTube and handheld videos that are shaky, and sometimes I don't know if it's a problem with younger generation, but we noticed that, why was the camera in upright position? Why wasn't it sideways? And some people said, oh, it doesn't matter in the web videos whether the picture is one way or the other, but how much should they put focus on image quality? Christian?
One issue is stabilization, of course, and in this case, modern smartphone users are actually in an advantage because I'm actually, sometimes when I don't have a tripod, I'm actually using my phone quite often now for filming because the stabilizer is extremely good. Yeah, I mean, film is always moving picture, so if you move the camera even more, and if it's not kind of part of the story you are telling, that you won't like to just stress on somebody hunting something or something, you know, where a kind of strong moving camera might be sensible for some seconds, it's usually always better to have the camera as stable as possible. Smartphones usually have very, very good digital stabilizers, yeah, that do a lot of editing already while recording, yeah. So that's quite good. If you don't use a smartphone, it's probably very, very good to have a tripod available, to at least for filming situations where not the moving is part of the story.
Rebecca?
As I think image quality is important because you want the people to learn, so you want them to look at something, and if the image quality is not good, then people tend not to look at it because it's just overwhelming or just distracting. And for me, that's the point for image quality. It has to fit the purpose. So it can be shaky if, like Christian said, if I'm filming a hunt, or if this is part of the content of the story. If the image quality underlines the story, and if it helps the story, then it's okay. But you always have to think first. You have to think that it should be as good as possible, and just underline the story. I think that's important for that.
Yeah, and I think this could be a comment for audio quality as well, but certainly for image quality. So if you aren't sure about the light, how it works, and if you're unsure what kind of image quality you're getting out of a smartphone or video camera, do tests. Try first. Don't start to interview right away, and don't only do the one first take, but take a couple of takes and check out what does the image quality actually look like. Is it too dark, or is there automatic zoom pumping back and zooming back and forth because there's not enough light, or is it focusing on the wrong thing? So I think it's always worthwhile to at least take a few exercise shots and learn how to use the device you have with you to know what kind of image quality it is actually producing. And maybe there are some selections that you have to know how to use in order to make it work inside, outside. Maybe if you have a proper camera from the school or yourself, you have to know how to take the white balance or small things. But nevertheless, if you have some time to tinker with the toys and play around with them, so I think it's worthwhile testing them first, and don't just go directly into interviewing a person and just do one take with the camera you don't know how to operate. Christian?
Because we mentioned picture sizes, yeah? Settings, picture setup. That goes a little bit in between technical and artistical, because you can play with that. Yeah, it also has an artistical aspect, but for an educational video, I think it has a very important technical one as well. Because if somebody needs to learn something, when I watch YouTube tutorials, sometimes I get mad because they're explaining me what I should do and I don't see it because they are too far away. Yeah, you have to show it in detail. And that is also good for the artistic quality, because a film which has always the same picture size is boring. Yeah, you should play around with changing picture sizes, changing perspectives. Yeah, being close, doing close-ups, doing being further away, and always think or keep in mind again your story and what supports your story. Yeah, sometimes the audience needs to see the whole pictures to understand. Yeah, because if you show a detail and you talk about something, a viewer can be distracted if he or she has the feeling, I want to see more to understand what's going on. So this is something you have to keep in mind when you are producing. Actually, already in the story, it sometimes helps if you think what actually is the picture size that supports best what I want to say or to show.
Then we briefly mentioned the settings of a camera, and of course, image quality is linked to that. But certainly, we are asking people to upload the videos to the internet. So the quality doesn't have to be like the same as it would be on the Blu-ray disc, but nevertheless, it's good idea to use HD quality because you can always cut down the quality for the net, but you cannot get more unless you used HD quality while you film, so you cannot upgrade afterwards the quality. But certainly, if your cell phone allows, Christian, what would be the numbers when we think about HD quality? What does it say on a smartphone? Is it?
Actually, I think it will only be a year, and then internet video will be better than the Blu-ray disc. I mean, the DVDs that are like 5 years old. 5 years old, they don't do the quality we have now on YouTube. Yeah, so actually now you should do a 1920 to 2080 as a minimum. I wouldn't, well, if you really have a device that can't do more, of course you have to go underneath, but there aren't many devices around that don't do full HD. So you should do full HD actually. And as well as Vimeo, as YouTube, all of them support it now. I wouldn't do 4K because that's a little bit an overkill, yeah. And it also, recording 4K needs an awful lot of disk space, yeah. So your device will be full with your recordings in a second, yeah. So I wouldn't do that. I would not do 4K at this stage. Maybe we can talk about that in 5 years. But I would definitely try to do 1920 to 1080.
And certainly, when you upload your video to YouTube, YouTube will tell you if the file is too large or if it cannot process it. But normally, with the cell phones, with smartphones and regular video cameras, usually the file you're uploading to YouTube, it should work automatically. So you don't have to make a lot of modifications. In some cases, if it doesn't work right away, if YouTube doesn't understand the file you're trying to upload, you can normally find the solution just by Googling the type of camera you have used, or then if you have tech support in your own school, please ask them if there are problems uploading your video to YouTube. But don't leave it to the last minute.
There is one thing students should check, especially if they borrow a camera. Yeah. Like if they borrow a camera if my students borrow one of our older cameras, and they might have to do because we get newer cameras, but they will be soon gone. Many older cameras, and with old I mean maybe 2 or 3 years old. Yeah, especially in the handycam sector, make a format which is called AVCHD. I never get it right. Yeah, which is a very strongly comprimiert. What's the word? Compressed format. Yeah. It's not so much used anymore in very new products. Yeah. But this format cannot be imported directly into on computers like usually. You need a converter. You need a converter or an editing software that can do that. So when you borrow a camera, check it first. What format does it do, and what do I need? If it has this AVCDH format, then you need to make sure that you have an editing software that can work with it. Yeah. Most cameras now do MOV or AVI formats or MP4s, and that is all right. So because these formats can be imported directly into anything you use for editing.
And we're losing our only viewer, but don't worry, students, the recording will be available. So thanks for joining up for a second, Marion. So I think the only thing I have in my head about image quality is that we've seen people using different kind of images. So maybe they've used photographs and moving image and then edited them together. And that's fine, but just to keep in mind that a certain level of consistency should be thought out, that if the image quality changes a lot, that it suddenly changes. And if it's distracting for the viewer, then it might be a problem. But naturally, that's if it works, then it works. It doesn't have to be a bad thing if the image quality changes. It can be some effective way of storytelling as well. But certainly, I think it's worthwhile trying to maintain a certain consistent quality of whatever kind of images you're using.
Perfectly right. That's a very important point. And I think that also applies to color. And here again, we go into the borderline between technical merits and artistic quality a bit, because different cameras record different colors. Yeah. And different situations make cameras record different colors. So if you're not very familiar with white balance stuff, because that's already a little bit something you have to kind of go a little deeper into the camera's functionality to do a manual white balance. Of course, you find it in the user manuals, but if you just want to do full automatic, the camera will make different colors in different light settings. So most editing software, at least the better one, has an option to adjust the color, yeah, automatically. Like I usually work with Final Cut Pro from Apple, and if you have that available, you just kind of select all clips and you say adjust color, and then it tries kind of to find a compromise among the different colors in the different clips, and that looks nicer. It's not totally essential, yeah, but it's something kind of, if you're able to do it, you can do it.
And listeners, I would like to point out that Christian, from four of us, Christian is the one who knows most about editing and technical aspects of editing. So he might say comments that even us wouldn't probably recognize. So again, if there are issues that you want to address, there might be somebody who can help you. But if some technical issues, if they're not disturbing the flow of the video, it's very likely that many of the jury members don't realize it. Those tiny details either. Some might see them, but certainly if they're not big issues, don't put too much time and effort into micromanaging all the technical issues. Yeah, Rebecca.
During the edit, I don't do anything else. So I'd like to offer that to all students from all participating universities. If there is a special technical question or something, you can write an email to me. You find my address on the contact and links on the Edit 2017 website. So everybody can write to me, and I try to help if possible.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, Rebecca has a comment.
Thank you. I was saying what you said, Janne, is really important. The video has to be as good as possible, but the educational value is not what is the most important. So you have to keep that in mind, and the video should support that. So if what for me is a really important criteria is that if you watch the video and you are wondering at some point, why does the image change, or why does the lighting change, then this distracts you from the content of the video. So this is something that that is important. You have to make the videos so that the visual and the audio doesn't distract you from the video, so that there's no point where the viewer is thinking, why does it go like that? So that's the most important point for me for technical merits.
Does Christian have one more comment?
I totally agree, Rebecca. There is the stuff and there is the nice stuff. Yeah, the essential stuff is important. The nice stuff can be done or not. Yeah, I had a video like some years ago. Actually, this group will join this year, at least some of them, because I work together with one of our history colleagues, and they're doing short videos about Nazi history places in Linz. We actually find at the end it should be a city map of Linz with QR codes, and when with the mobile phones then you can address the videos the students produce. Some of them will join with their videos this year, but the previous years sometimes we had a very good video and it had a kind of, it included an interview and the sound was not understandable, and that's essential. If you have sound that is not understandable, a video doesn't have an educational value. So that's something which is essential.
All right, let's talk a few words about essentials of editing. Editing can take days, weeks, months. You can put as many hours into editing as you want. You can polish your final product forever. But what is essential for editing? How much people should know about editing when it comes to educational videos? Christian, you had your hand.
I always drop I think what is important in editing is like when you make a cut within one clip, the cut is viewable. Yeah. So either that is part of the story or you need an overlay, which makes it a bit tricky because a lot of the simple software does not allow a second video track. So if you use something like iMovie on a mobile device for editing something, it only supports one video track, and then you cannot do a cut within a clip. You have to think of something different. Yeah, you have to record in a way that it's 2 clips from the beginning or something like that, because that really doesn't look nice. Yeah, to have this, jump in between where you see the cut. So I think that's essential in editing. Now there is a lot of cheap possibilities as well. VVideo, for instance, supports multi-track editing, and I actually found for mobile devices, I found an editing software which does allow multi-track video editing on mobile devices, which is called LumaTouch, LumaFusion. I can put it in the chat as well. It's not free, unfortunately. It's about 20 euros, but well, I don't know. It's that actually is the first software I know that allows multi-track editing on mobile devices. And if you want to cut within a clip, you need something that allows multi-track editing, that you can add a second video track.
So I think it's very important for participants to know the editing software you're using, know the limitations, and if you are starting from scratch and you want to learn to use high-end editing software, please be aware that Final Cut and Premiere, for example, you probably don't learn them right away in 15 minutes. There are things you need to know about the software before you can actually fluently start using them. Whereas if you're using iMovie on your iPad or the iMovie, you can pretty much start using it right away, but it certainly has some limitations. So if before you have a huge vision in your head how you're going to edit this, just be aware that there might be limitations on what an app can do and what must be learned if you want to use a higher end editing software. Christian.
Janne, this is probably the most important point you made now. I think it doesn't matter what device you use, but you always have to know what can it do and what can't it do, either in editing and recording. Yeah, if you use a mobile phone for recording, you cannot zoom because they just don't do that nicely. Yeah, So if you keep that in mind, what are the limitations of the tools I use, then you can make perfect things with the most simple stuff. If you don't keep within the limits of the simple stuff and you still use simple stuff, it doesn't look nicely.
And I think one thing that we have seen and discussed is that maybe this goes a little bit into graphics and titles as well, but in editing, we of course, as viewers, we like people doing creative edits, and we like to see that, oh, people know how to choose different kind of edits and how to incorporate them into the viewing experience. But sometimes too much is too much. So it doesn't have to be 100 cuts and different kind of edits and swipes and zooms and overlays and dissolves. I think stylistically, you want to limit the choices you use. You don't want to throw everything in right away, because again, back to the issue of distracting the viewing experience. If you use too much different kind of editing tricks, it's distracting, or it may look like they just didn't know what to pick, so they picked everything. So it might look really silly if too much of different kind of editing tricks is used. Shall we talk a few words about graphics and titles? And especially we have to mention the subtitles, right? What kind of advice would we give to students about graphics and titles? Rebecca.
The first advice I would give is that you have to be able to read them. Like, we had a video once where somebody put a white title or white subtitles over a white black background, and we didn't see anything. So if you do subtitles, just make sure that you can read them and that you can read them clearly. That's the first. And the second, just keep in mind that the viewer needs some time to read that. You cannot keep changing subtitles just like that. Just give the viewer time to read the subtitles.
Yeah, certainly. Video shouldn't be a bad PowerPoint presentation or ebook. So don't put too much text for people to read. Rather have a voiceover rather than too much text on the screen. Of course, we would like to have opening credits, right? At least the title of the video, for example, in opening. And then in the end credits, we would like to see the production team members' names. I think that's the minimum we want from the graphics. We want to have the necessary information about the people and the video included in the graphics and the titles. Christian.
Janne, have you used YouTube for subtitling?
We have, yeah. Do you mean the translation?
Well, I have never used it. I just know that YouTube has an option for subtitling clips, because I usually do it in Final Cut, but that's an option most people wouldn't have. So maybe we should explain a bit more, if you have experience in that, how we could do subtitling.
YouTube does make automatic translation. It uses Google's translation engine, which is actually quite good these days. Of course, it doesn't understand every dialect, every word being said. So it makes that translation, and you can access that file and then manually rework on those subtitles. So if you speak very clearly your own language, it understands actually quite many languages these days. If the sentences and the words are spoken out clearly, it actually does make a relatively good translation, and then you just have to kind of do a spell check and grammar check. But it really helps time-wise. It will give you a flying start, so you don't have to translate each sentence separately. So yeah, YouTube does do pretty good work, but it's not completely automatic, and it can sometimes make really funny translations. So you certainly want to check them, especially with educational videos, that it's a robot, so it hears things wrong sometimes, or it can misspell some words, or make some misinterpretations. But certainly it does work, but you have to do some work manually as well.
easy actually is it clear to do it, or is there a tutorial on YouTube how to do it? Because people might want to know how to do it.
There's a tutorial, and it's actually very simple. There's just a subtitling window that you can open, and it shows that what text at what time is going to be visible on the screen. And then it's pretty much like a word processor text editor. You just cut and paste or edit the text you have there on the side of the video. It's actually a very simple and useful tool. Anything else about the
Say
graphics? Yeah. Go ahead, Christian.
Just the subtitling. Subtitling is one way. Yeah. I think in our rules it is that the video has to be understandable for an international audience. It doesn't necessarily mean subtitling. That's one way. Yeah. It could also mean that you use like graphics or pictures and no language at all. That's also possible. Yeah. We had videos like that kind of didn't use a language. Yeah.
Or they were created in a way like, remember we had the one where somebody had just thought bubbles with symbols. That it was certainly created with very little verbal clues, but nevertheless, because it's a cinematic form, it worked very well storytelling-wise, even though there weren't a lot of words. So I guess we can just say the final thing about graphics and titles. There has to be enough information. If there is written text, it has to be expressed in a way that we can actually see it and have time to read it. And as long as the visuals of graphics aren't distracting, we're happy if the information comes through. And of course, again, when you go further, you can play with graphics and titles as well and do things with them in edit and maybe even special effects if somebody knows, but we are certainly not requiring anybody to go deeper into special effects of graphics and titles. We like to say that, but it's certainly not something that you have to put too much effort into. Okay, we have discussed the technical aspects. Now, is there anything you guys would like to add to the discussion? If not, I'm going to press stop, and we're going to start the final discussion about aesthetical, artistic